Good evening, everyone. My name is Five Nights Duelist, and today we are going back to the circus. I am talking about Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon. So, you've seen the deck profile. Well, this is the deck discussion. The deck discussion series that I am coming up with is just a more in-depth look on the deck that I made, showing you combinations and what the cards actually do to not make it boring. 3 copies of Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon. If he's in the pendulum zone during your end phase, you can blow him up and then target one monster in your deck with 1500 or less attack and add it to hand. Basically pendulum. And then if he would destroy a monster in battle, your opponent takes double the damage. Then we have 2 copies of Dragon Pit Magician. If you have another magician monster in the pendulum zone, you can discard a pendulum monster to destroy one spell or trap card. Then we have 2 copies of Dragon Pulse Magician. He is the opposite of Pit. He destroys monsters. Then you have Oath Dragon Magician. This guy is my buddy. He's my sacred friend. Basically, whenever he's in your pendulum zone and you have a Odd Eyes in your face extra deck, you can add it back to hand. Whenever he is pendulum summoned, you can add 1 Odd Eyes from your graveyard back to the hand. So, fun stuff. Then we have 3 copies of the Little Wolf, known as Silverclaw. When he's in your pendulum zone, all perform power monsters gain 300 attack. When he declares an attack, all perform power monsters gain an additional 300 attack. So if you have 3, that's 21, 24, 27. It just keeps on adding up. But at the end phase, his attack goes all the way back down. Then we have 1 Drumrill. You can normal summon him, but his level becomes 4. But his pendulum monster effect is whenever a monster you control and a monster your opponent controls battles, you can target that monster that you control, it gains 600 attack. The same effect of when he is on the field, including himself. Then we have 1 Joker. Joker's effect is you cannot pendulum summon monsters except for Perform Pal, Odd Eyes, or Magician cards. And his monster effect is pretty useful too. Whenever he is normal summoned, you can add 1 Odd Eyes, Magician, or Perform Pal card from your deck into your hand. Fun shit. Then we have the Monkey. Okay, what this little piano weasel looking monkey does is whenever he's in your pendulum zone, you can add 1 level 4 or lower Perform Cow. Wow, that's really embarrassing. Perform Pal monster from your deck to your hand. And then his monster effect is whenever he's in your hand, you can discard him to target a monster on the field and reduce its level. And I'm pretty sure from the last time I read it, yeah, it's Perform Pal or Odd Eyes monster in your hand, reduce it after discarding it. So, yeah. Then we have Wisdom Eye Magician. Wisdom Eye Magician, when he is on the field, you can target a pendulum monster on the field that has a different scale than its original and make its original scale until the end phase. Or you can activate his pendulum effect, where if you control another magician card on the field, you can send him straight to straight to the extra deck, because pendulums never die that way. And special summon 1 magician from your deck onto the pendulum scale. Pretty useful stuff. Then we have 1 copy of Time Gazer Magician. His monster effect is whenever a pendulum monster you control attacks, your opponent cannot activate trap cards. And then his monster effect is each time the first card in your pendulum zone will be destroyed by the opponent's card effect, it is not destroyed. Yay, fun shit, because if you don't have Sky Arc, then this guy comes in handy. Then we have a copy of Stargazer Magician. Boom, how you doing? Stargazer Magician is the counterpart to Time Gazer Magician. Now, unlike him with traps, he negates spells. And then whenever a monster you control will return to hand, you can special summon the same copy of the monster from your hand back to the field. Then we have 1 copy of Trump Witch. You can special summon her, then you contribute her to special summon a Dragon type fusion monster from your extra deck. which works with Odd Eyes. If it would be destroyed in your Pendulum Zone, you can target one Dragon-type fusion monster in your graveyard, special summon it, but is destroyed during the end phase. But more than likely, you're going to run out of those fusions before she even hits the graveyard. On to spells, you have Hurricane, Perform Pal Hurricane. As many Perform Pal cards as you control, you return that same number from the field on your opponent's side back to their hand. Buck a Moon, pretty self-explanatory, flips it face down. 3 copies of Sky Arc. It protects your Pendulum cards from being destroyed by card effect. And once per turn, you can destroy 1 Pendulum card to add an Odd Eyes from your deck to your hand. 3 copies of Pendulum Call. Pendulum Call is you discard a card, add 2 magicians with different names from your deck to the grave. They cannot activate their effects that turn, but they are also protected and cannot be destroyed by card effects that turn. And then 2 copies of MST. Everybody knows what MST does, and for the love of fucking God, MST does not negate. Just saying, people, learn your cards. For traps, we have 1 Pendulum Back. Pendulum Back's effect is basically, if you control 2 Pendulum cards in your Pendulum Zone, you can add 2 Pendulum monsters from your graveyard back to hand. We have 1 Compulse. Self-explanatory, returns it to hand if an extra deck monster goes back into the extra deck. Then we have Bottomless Trap Hole. It's plural, monster or monsters. That's why whenever someone Pendulum summons and you activate Bottomless Trap Hole, you don't just destroy 1, you destroy all of them. Then you have 2 copies of Command. What it does is when your opponent's monster declares an attack, you switch them all to defense and they cannot change until the next turn. Then we have 3 copies of Dimensional Prison. Opponent attacks, you banish it. That's just it. Then you have 3 copies of your little Rhoda Trap card, which really helps you search and make this deck go way quicker, is Perform Pal Call. Whenever your opponent would declare an attack, you can target 2 Perform Pal monsters in your deck with combined attack or less than the attack of the monster and add them to hand, and also on top of that negate the attack of the attacking monster. Fun shit. Now then, on to extra deck. We have 1 copy of Trapeze. Trapeze's effect is you can discard a material from him, target a monster on the field, it can attack twice. And then when it's destroyed, you can add 1, what was it called? Since the graveyard, you express summon 1 Perform Mage monster. I was thinking Perform Pal, but it's Perform Mage from deck to field. Then there's 1 number 66. You target a card on the field. As long as this card's on the field, that card cannot be destroyed. 1 number 50. Detach material. Destroy a card. Your opponent takes 1,000. Rhapsody and Berserk. Any cards that you hate that are in your opponent's graveyard, you can detach up to 2 materials during that turn, banish them from play. 2 copies of Queen Dragon Dragoon. Her effect is you can discard a material, other dragons cannot be targeted for an attack, and you detach a material from her, and then special summon 1 dragon from your graveyard back to the field. Then you have 2 copies of Odd Eyes Absolute Dragon. He is your Utopia of the deck. Whenever a monster declares an attack, you can negate it, and then you can resurrect an Odd Eyes from graveyard back to the field. Then we have 3 copies of the biggest creature in this deck, Ruin Eyes. Ruin Eyes, whenever he is summoned, fusion summoned that turn, he is unaffected by your opponent's card effects. And on top of that, if you fusion summon him using a level 3 or lower, he can attack twice. But if it's 5 or lower, he can attack up to 3 times. Then you have 2 copies of Beast Eyes. Beast Eyes' effect is whenever he destroys a monster by battle, you inflict damage to your opponent equal to the beast with the Odd Eyes that you sent to the graveyard, which is usually Silver Claw, so I'm dealing up to 1,800 damage per turn, on top of the damage that he inflicts, just in case it was in attack mode. Then we finish off with Burst. Whenever Burst is special summon, you add a Pendulum card in the Pendulum Zone and special summon it onto the field. Bad thing is, he cannot attack that turn. But there's a twist to this. If you noticed in this deck, I do not run any tuners whatsoever. That is because Absolute Dragon's effect is not only can he special summon an Odd Eyes from, well, actually not at all. It's actually from extra deck. My apologies. but it's actually from extra deck, and you can automatically special summon him to get out. Let's just say him, for instance, would be in your Pendulum Zone. You special summon it to the field. His effect goes off. You add Odd Eyes back from graveyard back to hand, and it just becomes completely freaking stupid. Anyways, I hope you guys all enjoyed this deck discussion on Odd Eyes. My name is Five Nights Duelist X, and I will see you guys back in the darkness.